So, hello, welcome back to another book summary. Today we're going to go through A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, who is the author of something with now, start living now, something like that. I just don't remember. The thing is, The Power of Now. There we go. Fortunately, it is already there in the fucking title. The #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Power of Now, and apparently A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, is kind of the sequel to that. Apparently. I'm not quite sure, I don't really know, but we're gonna go through it. I am really trying hard to not have that big expectations for this book because, I've read something about it just being like some woo-woo thing again, and certainly also not that easy to read, as also the last book summary that we went through, which was Awareness by Anthony DeMello. So, from time to time I thought, well, it is actually really not easy to read the book because it's very, don't want to say beating around the bush, but yeah, it's talking about things, and this might just be the way to do it, which, I don't know, like, pretty damn difficult to explain what I mean. Anyway, this is the first and 3 posts in a book summary series on Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. You can jump to the other posts here. Book summary 2, book summary 3, and I do want to point out, it's lengthy. It really is. There's quite something to it. So I hope that I'm gonna go through the whole thing. Not necessarily because I want to do it, because it probably is going to be good for people. We're going to see, I can't necessarily tell you for sure that I'm going to do so, but anyway. Where to begin? A New Earth is by far one of the most life-changing books I've ever read, but it is not the easiest read. In fact, I started it and stopped at least 3 times before ever making it the entire way through. Maybe I just wasn't ready the last few years, so how did I finally make it to the end? Question mark, and me closing this motherfucking window because it is goddamn noisy out here next to the street. Common problem, people know, I know. Anyway, most importantly, I think the timing was finally right, but tactically I also changed how I read the book this time. I listened to the audiobook and followed along in the ebook at the same time. I believe this see/say experience allowed me to digest and absorb the book at a deeper level. I'd highly recommend that approach if you decide to read it as well, and I hope you do. I do want to point out that I have done that as well. When I was reading George Orwell's 1984, which I think is a pretty great book, probably one of the best that I've read. And well, I didn't read that many books, some of them, but this one's probably going to be of one of those that I indeed enjoyed quite a bit. Still, I think it was important for me to listen to it. Also when it comes to a language learning perspective, because you're just really going to see how things are pronounced, how words are pronounced, how to read in a great way, how to read in a way that is enjoyable, and so on and so forth. So I think in the end, it was quite important for me to do it in that way, and it is also easier for one to grasp and internalize things. Also because, and I think there's actually some function in Audible that when you're listening to something that, and if you have the book as well, so if you have the audiobook and the ebook, that if you listen to something, then it's going to synchronize with the ebook and also the other way around. As far as I know, at least. All in all, I saved more notes from this book than any other book I've ever read. Over 16,000 words of notes. Editing my notes is like reading the book a second and third time through, and I still feel like I'm learning new things each time. I believe I started the irreversible awakening process. Before we dive in, some quick housekeeping. All quotes are from the author, Eckhart Tolle, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Then there is a table of contents, and yeah. A New Earth Awakening to Your Life's Purpose by Eckhart Tolle. About Eckhart Tolle. Not gonna go through it either. A New Earth, Religion and Spirituality. Partly as a result of the spiritual teachings that have arisen outside the established religions, but also due to an influx of the ancient Eastern wisdom teachings, a growing number of followers of traditional religions are able to let go of identification with form, dogma, and rigid belief systems and discover the original path that is hidden within their own spiritual tradition at the same time as they discover the depth within themselves. They realize that how spiritual, quote unquote, you are has nothing to do with what you believe, but everything to do with your state of consciousness. This, in turn, determines how you act in the world and interact with others. Many people are already aware of the difference between spirituality and religion. They realize that having a belief system, a set of thoughts that you regard as the absolute truth, does not make you spiritual, no matter what the nature of those beliefs is. In fact, the more you make your thoughts/beliefs into your identity, the more cut off you are from the spiritual dimension within yourself. And now we're actually getting back to the whole identity thing that Anthony DeMello in Awareness was also talking about quite a bit, that you shouldn't be identifying yourself with quite anything. Not your job that you're doing, not your beliefs, not your political thoughts, nothing quite. And one of the only... also after reading or going through the summary of awareness, reasons not to do that, at least as far as I can remember, is because if you aren't able to do that anymore, you lose a part of your identity, which is not good at all. I mean, if you say that, okay, I am an athlete, and you, because of whatever reason, have to stop to do the sport that you're doing, well, guess what? Who's going to be fucked and pretty depressed, even though this essentially as well is controlled by you, because we still decide how we feel and what we do and so on and so forth. But anyway, period. Many quote unquote religious people are stuck at that level. They equate truth with thought, and as they are completely identified with thoughts, which is their mind, they claim to be in a sole possession of the truth in an unconscious attempt to protect their identity. The new spirituality, the transformation of consciousness, is arising to a large extent outside of the structure of this existing institutionalized religions. A large-scale opinion or opening of spirituality outside of the religious structures is an entirely new development. In the past, this would have been inconceivable, especially in the West, the most mind-dominated of all cultures. Yes, we are motherfuckers. Where the Christian church had a virtual franchise on spirituality. Indeed. In the service of the truth, religious teachings represent signposts or maps left behind by awakened humans to assist you in spiritual awakening, that is to say, in becoming free of identification with form. Christ can be seen as the archetypal human, embodying both the pain and the possibility of transcendence. If we look more deeply into humanity's ancient religions and spiritual traditions, we will find that underneath the many surface differences, there are two core insights that most of them agree on. The words they use to describe those insights differ, yet they all point to a twofold fundamental truth. The first part of this truth is the realization that the quote-unquote normal state of mind of most human beings contains a strong element of what we might call dysfunction or even madness. This really sounds fucked up. Most Asian religions and spiritual traditions share the common insight that our quote-unquote normal state is marred by a fundamental defect. However, out of this insight into the nature of the human condition, we might call it the bad news, arises a second insight. The good news of the possibility of a radical transformation of human consciousness. In Hindu teachings and sometimes in Buddhism also, this transformation is called enlightenment. Another word that we know from awareness. In the teachings of Jesus, it is salvation, and in Buddhism, it is the end of suffering. Liberation and awakening are other terms used to describe this transformation. What is quite funny, I think that also, well, I'm not quite sure if awareness was talking about that, but nobody was talking about, well, I just don't know how to call the religion. I know just in German it's Islam. I don't know if this is fucking English. I hate it. Let's see. Probably the pronunciation. Yeah, it is Islam, indeed. The Muslim world or the Muslimic religion. Maybe, I don't know. I'm actually very sorry for doing that, because I know that religion is a very, 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 very quote-unquote controversial and a difficult topic to talk about, because there's so many ways in which you can hurt somebody and, well, piss off somebody by, kind of not being able to pronouncing things wrongly, and so on and so forth. And I'm really sorry, but it's just something that struck me and came to my mind. Most ancient religions, have I read that already? Yes, I have. A new earth, physical body. Most people are so distracted by their thoughts, so identified with the voices in their heads, they can no longer feel the aliveness within them. Most people are so distracted by their thoughts, so identified with the voices in their heads, they can no longer feel the aliveness within them. To be unable to feel the life that animates the physical body, the very life that you are, is the greatest deprivation that can happen to you. You then begin to look not only for substitutes for that natural state of well-being within, but also for something to cover up the continuous unease that you feel when you are not in touch with the aliveness that is always there, but usually overlooked. The physical body is no more than a misperception of who you are. In many ways, it is a microscopic version of outer space. So your physical body, which is form, reveals itself as essentially formless when you go deeper into it. It becomes a doorway into inner space. Breathing isn't really something that you do, but something that you witness as it happens. Breathing happens by itself. The intelligence within the body is doing it. All you have to do is watch it happening. Yeah. Still, it is a very interesting thought that it is just something that happens. Not necessarily it being something that you control. You can control it if you want to, and there's also certain benefits to controlling it in a certain way and therefore breathing in a certain way. But it's, saying it in this way is pretty interesting, which kind of differentiates then and also gives some space between you and your mind, which is I don't know, it's a really difficult thing to say. I don't know if it is right or not, from a scientific perspective on. From a spiritual perspective, yeah, maybe, you are you, your thoughts are you are your head, but you're not your mind, you're not your brain that is essentially controlling all those things. But in the end, it is your subconscious. And still there are some, pretty important things in your subconscious. Anyway. A new earth ego. Ego is no more than this, identification with form, which primarily means thought forms. If evil has any reality, and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is also its definition. Complete identification with form. Physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms, blah, blah, blah. This results in a total unawareness of my connectedness with the whole, my intrinsic oneness with every other as well as with the source. This forgetfulness is original sin, suffering, delusion. Does not sound pretty good, I gotta say that. The ego could be defined simply in this way: a dysfunctional relationship with the present moment. The density of the ego depends on the degree to which you, the consciousness, are identified with your mind, with thinking. Thinking is no more than a tiny aspect of the totality of consciousness, the totality of who you are. Until now, human intelligence, which is no more than a minute aspect of universal intelligence has been distorted and misused by the ego. I call that intelligence in the service of madness. On our planet, the human ego represents the final stage of universal sleep. Now we again talking about sleep. Pretty interesting, that is the same fucking analogy as in awareness. The identification of consciousness with form, it was a necessary stage in the evolution of consciousness. If the structure of the human mind remain unchanged, we will always end up recreating fundamentally the same world, the same evils, and the same dysfunction. Don't take the ego too seriously. When you detect egoic behavior in yourself, smile. At times you may even laugh. How could humanity have been taken in by this for so long? The ego tends to equate having with being. I have, therefore I am. And the more I have, the more I am. The ego lives through comparison. How you're seen by others turns into how you see yourself. The ego identifies with having, but its satisfaction in having is a relatively shallow and short-lived one. Concealed within it remains a deep-seated sense of dissatisfaction, of incompleteness, of not enough. I don't have enough yet, by which the ego really means I am not enough yet. The physical needs for food, water, shelter, clothing, and basic comforts could be easily met for all humans on the planet, were it not for the imbalance of resources created by the insane and rapacious need for more, the greed of the ego. Ego arises when your sense of beingness of I am, which is formless, consciousness gets mixed up with form. This is the meaning of identification. This is forgetfulness of being, the primary error, the illusion of absolute separateness that turns reality into a nightmare. The ego may be clever, but it is not intelligent. Cleverness pursues its own little aims. Intelligence sees the larger whole in which all things are connected. Cleverness is motivated by self-interest, and it is extremely short-sighted. Most politicians and business people are clever, very few are intelligent. Whatever is attained through cleverness is short-lived and always turns out to be eventually self-defeating. Cleverness divides, intelligence includes. Ego implies unawareness. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. The old mind pattern or mental habit may still survive and recur for a while because it has the momentum of thousands of years of collective human unconsciousness behind it, but every time it is recognized, it is weakened. So think about your ego. And with that being said, I'm going to see you the next time. Bye-bye.